So hi everyone. Today we have Andrea Stewart, the author behind The Boneshot Daughter, arriving at my channel just today. Hi Andrea.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Yeah, and before we get started, this video, as always, is sponsored by The Broken Binding. The Broken Binding is a terrific indie bookstore that's currently rising in social media right now. If you haven't checked that bookstore, please check that bookstore. And there is a signed book of The Boneshot Daughter in that bookstore right now. It is the book of the month in The Broken Binding. Please check it out. And just to get things started, please tell us a bit about yourself and about The Boneshot Daughter.
Okay, so I'm Andrea Stewart. I write fantasy and science fiction. The Boneshot Daughter is my debut novel. I wrote a lot of novels before that did not get published.
Oh, really?
Yes. So that was the 7th manuscript that I had tried to get published. So yeah, it was a long road. It took me a while with querying agents. And then after I got an agent, we didn't sell the first 2 manuscripts that I had out on submission. So this was the 3rd one that went out on submission, the 7th one that I had written. So yeah, so it took a while. The Boneshot Daughter is an epic fantasy that is in an Asian-inspired setting. And it is multi-POV, so it follows several characters. So there's Lynn, who's a daughter who's trying to reclaim her rightful place as heir. There is Jovis, who's a smuggler who professes not to care, but can't seem to stop doing good things. There are 2 women who are in an established relationship who are trying to deal with the class differences between them. And then there's a woman, Sand, who is on this distant island who's trying to figure out like why she's there and how she got there, basically. Yeah. And all of these storylines eventually do intertwine.
And they're so good. They're so good. I really loved it. It's my favorite debut of last year. It's amazing.
Oh, yay. I'm so glad that you liked it.
I kept on shouting about it everywhere. I just had to get more and more readers to read this book. And this is so refreshing. There is one thing that I've always been curious about. I don't know if this has been asked to you or not, is that in The Boneshot Daughter, you use not one, but you use 2 styles of POV. There is first person and there is third person. I'm curious, was this ever difficult for you to pull off? Because this is a bit uncommon in fantasy.
I don't think that it was difficult for me to pull off. It was something that I had thought about because I had written a few novels in first person, and I really enjoy first person because I feel like you can get very into the character's voice and everything. But at the same time, I really also enjoy writing in third person. And I knew that when I was writing an epic fantasy, I wanted to do something multi-POV. So it was something that I had kind of had in the back of my mind for a while, but I had didn't think that it was something that I could necessarily do until I saw a couple of other books that did some things with POV. There was
The Broken Earth by N.K.
Jemisin. That was one of them. So there's The Broken Earth, which I was like, you know what? She's doing second person.
That is great.
Like, she got away with it. Maybe I can get away with this. And then I also read Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik, which has multiple first person POVs in there. So I was like, well, she can do that. And N.K. Jemisin can have second person in her book, then maybe I can mix first and third. So I just went ahead and tried it, and nobody told me that I couldn't. So
it worked really well. It worked really well. And you know, I talked with some readers, right, about this, that did you realize that she uses first and third person? And then some of them actually said, whoa, really? I didn't even realize the transition because it all works seamlessly.
Oh, that's so good to hear. Yeah, I mean, it does come, there is like reasons and stuff behind it, which, you know, I think people will see later on. But yeah, I'm really glad that it came across as seamless, because the last thing that I want to do is to like interrupt readers' immersion in the story. Like that's one of the things that's really important to me, is just to really have an immersive story.
That's never a good thing. Oh no, disjoint.
Yeah.
Again. By the way, when I first when I first heard about the Born Shot Daughter, it was through the cover art, right? The cover art is gorgeous. It is so gorgeous.
Oh yeah, I am so pleased with it. It's yeah.
And did you have any role in the design of this cover art, or was it all by the cover artist?
No, that was basically all the cover artists. So they did send me like sketches, and they're like, oh, this is what we were thinking. And well, first they were like, oh, we want to do like something that's like a little more like symbolic and less like representational. And they gave me a couple of cover examples. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. And then they sent some sketches that the artist had done, and I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. Yeah. So basically, I mean, I didn't have anything critical to say or anything that should have been like added or, you know, taken away. I was like, this is basically perfect. So I'm very excited to see what the book 2 cover is going to look like. I know that they're going to do, I mean, it's the same artist and they're going to do something similar. So, but yeah, I was extremely pleased, especially like they also sent me some of the photos that she was using as inspiration. It's like these ivory carvings from China.
Nice.
And it just reminded me a lot of this chest that my parents have. That's got like similar carvings on it that I used to play with as a kid, where it's got like the little people on there and like the trees and the buildings. And I would, you know, I would like trace it when I was a kid and just like lie by it and look at it. So, so yeah, so it was really neat to kind of see some of like my memories in a way reflected in the cover. So I was very, very pleased with it.
That is such a cute story. And speaking of when the time when you were kids, I think in the acknowledgement of the Bone Shard Daughter, you mentioned right that I think your 5th grade teacher, yeah, I think your 5th grade teacher praised you on your clay monster. Was it clay monster story?
Oh, yeah. So that was basically how I had gotten started writing. Was we had this creative writing exercise in 5th grade where we had to imagine that a clay figurine of like whatever had come to life and write a whole story about it. So I like went on this, took this whole journey on this story with this clay falcon that came to life and like was like carrying somebody to this magical land. But my teacher really loved it, and she kind of encouraged me, and that's basically how I got started. Because once I was like, oh, well, maybe this is something that I can do, that I'm pretty good at. So my dad actually like set up his old computer in the basement that I could write on. It was a long time ago. So it was like a computer with like the black screen and like the green letters, you know?
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I was like typing away on that as a kid. And then I graduated later to one that was like, oh, it was like word perfect with the blue screen and like the gray letters. I had to like look through my dad's like huge manual to figure out how to use it. But yeah, that's basically how it started. So I started writing stories on there, which first were like rip-offs off of like the Black Stallion, because that was I was way into that. So it's like self-insert fan fiction. But yeah, then I started writing my own stuff and basically didn't stop.
So in a way, that's kind of your starting point for everything, right?
Yeah. So it was really nice to be able to thank her in the acknowledgements, and then I sent her a copy of my book, and
Oh my
it was
God.
really nice.
What did she say?
Oh, she said that, oh, I can't remember. I have an email from her, but we were talking a little bit about it. I know that she was excited that, you know, I'd actually continued to write and did publish
You
the
must be
book.
super
So.
proud. I mean, 5th grade.
Yeah, I think that's like, teachers are so important and can really kind of change the direction of a kid's life, because I mean, I don't know if I would have really started seriously writing without her encouragement.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, even for me, because English is my third language, if I
Oh,
didn't learn,
wow.
yeah, if I didn't learn about this from my teachers, then I wouldn't be able to speak and write reviews like this. But yeah, I'm grateful for teachers as well. And speaking of this debut, you debuted during the pandemic last year.
Yes.
How has things been going for that? But from my observation as a reader, I think the Borusia daughter is doing pretty well. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that it's doing pretty well. I think that I got lucky in the sense that it wasn't debuting at the beginning of a pandemic, because I feel like that was a lot harder, where people were not really interested in picking up anything new at that point. Everybody was just kind of following the news and more concerned about locking down. So I think by the time September rolled around, it was like a little, everybody had kind of gotten used to it, which is a little sad to say. Uh, but so I don't think it affected it as much as it did for people that were debuting at the beginning of the pandemic, because I think at that time bookstores were starting to at least do like online sales and things. It was disappointing in the sense that I didn't get to do in-person events. Like when you think about writing a book and you think about what is it going to be like when I can hold it in my hands
I,
and it's on bookstore shelves, like the things you think about too are like, oh, I'm going to do like a reading and I'm going to go places. And so I'd had this whole plan where I wanted to, like drive around to bookstores and go like up and down the coast and stuff, although that probably would have been hard since I didn't expect that we'd have a baby.
oh yeah.
Yeah. So that would have been a little bit different. But yeah, so that was a little disappointing I didn't get to do in-person events. But I feel like all things considered, it went pretty well.
Mm, that's good. Hopefully, things will be even better for the Bone Shot Emperor. The Bone Shot
I
Emperor.
hope so. I have plans.
Oh, nice. By the way, speaking of the Bone Shot Emperor, would you say that writing your debut or writing the sequel is harder?
Oh my God, writing the sequel was so much harder. I think so. All of those manuscripts that I had written before, I think all of except one were just book ones. So I had a lot of practice writing first books.
Mm.
So by the time that I got to the Bone Shard Daughter, I sat down and I outlined it, and then I wrote it in 3 months. And then I didn't have to do a ton of revisions either. Like they were pretty minor. So at that point, I was like, okay, cool. I know how to write a book. and then, and then I got to Bone Shard Emperor, and oh my gosh, it was very difficult to write, because I feel like, especially with a trilogy, you're juggling, the continuation of book one storylines. You bringing in new stuff that's going to be resolved in book three, and you've just got like everything up in the air. So yeah, I ended up rewriting like a third of it after I was finished with the rough draft. There was just so much to keep track of. I like did this, it looked like a conspiracy map where I had like a piece of paper where I was like drawing how everything was like connected and what like led to what. So I could see like how everything was connected and make sure that I was actually addressing everything. So hopefully, knock on wood, that turned out okay. Yeah, I like hated the whole thing up until I started getting closer to having it revised and finished, and then I was like, okay, I think this is good and I'm happy with it. But it took a long time, especially like, having the baby in between and like the pandemic. It was just
How do you
it was an interesting time.
even have the schedule to do writing in the midst of all this?
Well, I mean, fortunately, I got a big enough advance that I was able to quit my job. So
Ah,
if I had not done that, I don't know how I would have been able to get it done, because especially, being pregnant and everything, I was exhausted all the time and like falling asleep randomly at my keyboard. So so yeah, that was, yeah. And then I had like complications later on, and so I was going to the doctor's office all the time. Yeah, so it was interesting, but I did end up finishing it, and I'm happy with it. So hopefully hopefully readers like it too. I do still like wake up in the middle of the night and like a cold sweat thinking like, oh my God, did I address this thing in that book? And then I have to go look and then realize, oh wait, I did. Okay.
It's still
So,
about when is the release date? Is it November?
it is November, yes.
Yeah.
So it's already we've already gone through all the edits, all the proofing, so it is good to go.
You cannot change.
I'm just waiting to see the cover.
When will it be ready anyway? Not yet? The cover art is not ready yet?
No, not yet. So I know that, okay, so I've been teased a little bit. My editor has said that he's seen mock-ups for it and it looks great. I'm like, okay, cool. But so when do I get to see it?
What would you say as the biggest inspirations behind the Bone Shark Daughter? Oh, and in that topic, which authors is the biggest inspirations behind your work and your writing?
Oh my goodness, that is a lot. I feel like when you write something and when you are an author, like you kind of draw inspiration from everything and anything. So for Bone Shark Daughter, it's like, I feel like oftentimes I'll have an idea that I think is neat, and then I'll have these other ideas that I think are neat. And then I kind of have to see which ideas I can put together into a cohesive story. So for that one there, I had like a few ideas that I had been thinking about for a while. I knew I wanted to have something with constructs because I like that kind of sci-fi element in that fantasy setting, where they're a little bit like robots, but more fleshy, obviously. I knew that I wanted to have a like palace of locked doors where this woman was trying to figure out these mysteries, and I knew I wanted to have a smuggler character. So that's like the things that I had started out with. And then for the Bone Shard magic itself, that inspiration came from a lunch that I had with some of my friends. And then my friend
Lost Tether? Was it with Marina Lost Tether?
Yeah, I've told this story so many times. It's with Marina.
That is such a good story, though.
Yeah. And then she almost choked on the piece of bone in her food, and I was like, "Oh, a shard of bone." And I'm like, "Oh, like what if I use that for magic?" And, she almost swallowed it. So it's like, what if you had those like inside the construct? So yeah, that kind of like got everything like working, and then I thought about how to put these ideas together into this story. So that's basically how that started. And I feel like it's a really long process for these things. Like I'll often be kind of ruminating on an idea for several years, and I'll jot some things down. Like I have an idea document where I'm like, this would be cool. And then I just kind of go back to it and add to it and kind of flesh things out as time moves on. So that was kind of the inspiration for that. As far as authors that I draw inspiration from, my God, like I could go on and on and on. I feel like every new book that I pick up, I see something in there that I'm like, this is really interesting how this author did this, and I want to do something similar. I think like the ones that I've really enjoyed are like Robin Hobb. I really love what she does with characters and environment and setting. Like she really knows how to make something like she just immerses you in both the characters and in the setting. Like she does some really, really neat things that make a world feel really lived in. Brandon Sanderson, I really enjoy his magic systems, and I enjoy his characters as well, and his world building. That's really fun because I feel like there are so many usual kind of Western European worlds in fantasy, which is fine and it's great. But I like that he kind of pushes things a little bit farther. N.K. Jemisin, obviously. I love her work. She's incredible. I can't say enough good things about her writing. Like I feel like I read the Broken Earth trilogy, and it's like one of those pieces of work that you read and you're like, oh my God, I will never write something this brilliant. It's just so good. Gosh, yeah, I'm like looking at my bookshelf, which is funny because I have most of my books on like ebook just because it takes up less space. But yeah, like Melanie Ron, I've really enjoyed her work. Like she's an amazing epic fantasy author that I feel like doesn't get enough appreciation.
Wow, that's a lot.
There's like a lot. Yeah, I could go on and on and on because it's basically like anything that I pick up. There's usually something in there that I think I could learn from, you know. So
who said this? Oh yeah, I think Evan Winter said the same thing. Evan Winter. He said that every book that he has read somehow influenced him to write his books. And I think that's And you know, when you mentioned, I remember I think it was before the Bone Shard Daughter debut, but I've read the book. And then I remember we were talking about it on Twitter, and you mentioned that you were looking forward to Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson, right? And then the entire group of my blog, Novel Notions, all of them love Sanderson's books, especially the Stormlight Archive. And then when you mentioned that, we were like, okay, we have to read her books.
I am on, so I'm listening to Rhythm of War on audiobook, and I am on part 4 of 5. So I'm getting there. I'm getting close. And I am enjoying it immensely. It's funny because it does feel like such a commitment when you pick it up though, because it's huge. They are chunkers. Yeah. I remember like I was really excited when Way of Kings was announced, and everything that I'd heard about it sounded like the kind of book that I wanted to read. And I pre-ordered it on ebook. And I did not realize how large it was. So it like popped into my Kindle, like, you know, as soon as it came out. I started reading right away. And I remember thinking like, oh, I must be pretty far through this book. I've been reading for a while. And I look and it's like 2%. That was my progress. I didn't realize like until like later I went to the bookstore and bought the paperback copy because I just loved it so much. I wanted another copy. And I got a signed too. But I was like, oh my God, it's like huge.
No wonder I moved only 2%.
I know. But it doesn't like feel like that long sometimes because I feel like he keeps the story moving along pretty well. I feel like Way of Kings there was like quite a lot of setup, but there had to be. But after that, like I feel like it's been moving pretty quickly.
Yes, like in Words of Radiance, it moves so fast, in my opinion. It
did.
It's 1,200 pages long, but it doesn't.
I like it. You get like your money's worth though when you get an audiobook, you know. You're getting so many hours. Yeah.
And speaking of there is a lot of favorite characters right now around social media surrounding your books, like Jovis, and usually it's around Jovis or Mephi, right? And what inspired Mephi's character? A lot of people want to know about this, and you create such an iconic line, even though it's very simple, very good. That's a very simple line, and yet it sticks. It really sticks. How did you come up with this?
Well, I was thinking, so when I was writing it, I was thinking like how much I enjoy certain tropes in fantasy, and the animal companion is like my favorite trope. I just love it so much, and especially because I love animals so much, and I have, you know, I've always had pets. So I really wanted to create this animal companion that reminded me of like my favorite pets, which are I like to self-torture myself. I like pets that are they're really smart and like really mischievous, and they're obnoxious but very lovable. So that was so I kind of wanted to create an animal companion that I would really enjoy. So Mephi is like the kind of companion that I would really love having around. It's kind of funny because actually people ask me a lot if he was inspired by my cat Mochi, who is very much like that. He's always getting into trouble and
Okay.
being a little bit obnoxious and stealing food. But I actually got Mochi like after I had started writing the Bone Shard Daughters. It's like about halfway through it when I got Mochi. So yeah, but yeah, so it's like, and then I wanted, I knew that I wanted to have him talk, but it was kind of a thing where he didn't know how to talk at first. So so he's kind of learning how to put things together, which is where the whole like a very good came from. He's still like learning how to speak.
It's so cute and adorable. I think I saw a fan art. Was it done by your sister? That the one that
Oh yeah, there's
maybe he's holding a
oh
fish.
where he's holding the fish. Yeah, that one my sister did.
It's so
I'm very
beautiful.
lucky that yeah, I'm very lucky she's an artist, and she does such cute like little drawings. I really really love her work. But yeah, so she has him holding a fish and he's saying, I deserve this. And I'm like, he does deserve it.
We were all like, yeah, you definitely do. And the is Asian inspired setting of your book, it's also something that in my opinion is a bit uncommon because it takes place in an archipelago. And for me, that
Mhm.
I live in Indonesia, right? It's a part of Malay archipelago, one of the probably the biggest archipelago in the world, probably. And this kind of
Yeah.
speaks volume, and I can kind of connect with this. And was this always your intention for the story to take place in an archipelago?
Yeah, so that was one of the things that was on my like wish list of things I wanted to write was a story set in an archipelago of islands, because I feel like when I was reading stuff when I was a kid, that was some of the stuff that I really enjoyed was reading like Wizard of Earthsea.
So beautiful.
And then my favorite, oh yeah, I love the map. And then my favorite Narnia book was always Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I
Ah,
just like that sense of like discovery where they, go to a different island and there's something new and special about it. So I kind of wanted that in my book. I did end up having to read a lot about sailing, like none of which I used. I kind of just hand
no.
waved it instead. Well, I mean, it's like one of those things where everybody sails like a little bit differently, apparently. So I didn't want to like include details that one person would be like, well, yes, this is the way that we do it. And another person would be like, no. So I kind of like hand waved it a little bit, but it was a lot of interesting reading. um but yeah, no, I did really want to write a book that was set in an archipelago, and I especially wanted it to be more of a tropical setting where they have, instead of summer, winter, fall, spring, they have like a wet season and a dry season, and they're both still warm but they have very different weather patterns.
It's amazing, because in your books, one of the best aspect about it, from my opinion, is that it feels refreshing. Everything about it just feels a bit uncommon in fantasy, but it worked like the one you mentioned earlier, like the construct. It can be considered a bit of a sci-fi, and then there is the horror element. I don't want to spoil this one, but it shocked me. And then there's also this the world building and all that. I think everything works so well, and I cannot wait for book two. And do you ever feel like you're jumping back and forth in time? Because I think you just mentioned that you finished writing the first draft of book three, right?
Yes. Yeah, I feel like I've told this to many people where I said, okay, so if you're gonna do traditional publishing, you're basically constantly living in the past and in the future. Because I feel like it was just last month, I think, that I had handed in the proofs for book two.
Okay.
And then, then I'm working on like book 3, and then the paperback for book 1 just came out, so it's like all of
Yeah.
these things. And then sometimes people will ask me things about the books, and then I'll have to try to remember, was that in book 1 or is that in book 2 or 3? Like, I don't want to say any kind of spoilers.
Yeah,
So I kind of have to
understandable,
think back, like,
understandable.
did I talk about that? I don't remember if I did.
Oh my God. And so after the Bone Shard War, right? War, right? The third book is called the Bone Shard War, right? And after that, the series is done. Do you already have any plan for the next one, or not yet?
So I've been jotting some ideas down. I don't have a complete idea yet. It's still
Okay.
percolating. But yeah, I have some ideas, like what I want to do for the next book. And again, it does take place on kind of a unique world. I always want to do things a little bit differently, as far as like, I don't want it to be set in like a Western European kind of like fantasy, which I love reading. But I just wanted to write something a little bit different. And then also, like, I've been kind of building out some of the characters and the magic systems. Yeah. So don't want to say too much. I'm like, because don't have anything solid yet.
This is
It's not completely solid yet. It's just like, it's like some vague feelings. Like, I'm like, I know there's like, I think there's going to be sinkholes, because I find those like weird and creepy. Like, there's going to be some magic involved in them. And there's like a race of winged creatures that
Oh
live on
my.
this underside. But anyways, there's that kind of stuff. Like, I'm like kind of thinking it up, but it's not like completely solid yet.
But whatever you write, I will definitely check it out. Definitely.
Well, I hope it doesn't disappoint.
So we're almost at the end of this interview, but before we close this interview, what advice do you have for new writers, especially during these times?
I would definitely say, for new writers, find a group of people that you can connect with and that you can exchange work with, who are serious about writing and who are at like a similar skill level and everything that you are. I feel like, I mean, especially during a pandemic, it's very easy to feel isolated and to not get that kind of social feedback. But I feel like it's especially important for writers, because you're already doing this very isolated activity where you're sitting down and living in your own head. So having people that you can bounce ideas off of, and that you can get feedback from, and that you can complain to,
Oh yeah,
I think is
that's
really important.
definitely needed. That's definitely needed.
Yeah, complain to your people. Don't take it directly on Twitter. You don't know what you're going to be starting. You may be starting something terrible. So find your group.
I've seen it too much.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, I think you should have said that to like your select group of people first, before thinking about putting it in the world. So yeah.
I think that's a very solid advice, especially the last one. That's very solid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's it for today. And I just want to say thank you so much for visiting my channel. And for those of you who haven't read The Bone Shard Daughter, please give this a try. I have always said this, that this is my favorite debut of 2020. Yeah, 2020. And I still stand by those words. Please give this book a try and check out The Broken Binding. And thank you so much to Andrea Stewart. Thank you so much for visiting this channel. Bye.
Thank you so much for having me.
Mhm.